My name is Roman Sampson, and this is the show. Hashtag no filter. Roll that title. And today on our show we have a really interesting individual. He's a former martial artist. You still wouldn't want to mess with him. He is also the co-presenter of the Scotland Stoics with his co-presenter who is Colin Hay. Now they are doing really, really well. The man has a lot of different methods of belief and action, and we're going to find out how he applies this. Very interesting man to his life. He's got some powerful story, and he came from the depths of darkness into an enlightened way of life.
So I'm putting out this video today. If you can look behind me, look at all these beautiful hills. Right behind us now, by my head here, is Ben Nevis. Now, why I'm putting this video out, every day I put up quotes, stoic quotes, mostly about different issues. The other day I put up a quote from Seneca saying, if you wish to be loved, love. So with the question I'm asking, what does that mean to people? You know, for me in the past it was what I could get out of people. So today I'm saying a different message. Today, as I see that quote, is that the more I give it, I get the same in return. So I'm putting out a wee shout out to a few people who I love. I know it sounds a bit corny to people, and I don't care for the haters are going to hate me for it, slag me for it. Who cares? It's not for you. This is for the people who want to hear it. And it goes like this. I'm putting it to my family first. I want to tell my brothers, I love you. I want to tell my mammy why I love her. I love her because you've helped me with many things throughout my life. Financially, spiritually, loving. So thanks. My dad for the values and the ethics you gave me. Thanks for that. My immediate family, my son. Your dad loves you. You know you do wrong, but you know that. You can turn it round. Max, love you son. Jimmy, love you son. Holly, thanks for being there and being a great daughter for us. And for the grand man you're bringing into my life. I love you for that day. For my estranged ex-wife, wife, partner, soon to be partner, whoever knows. I love you so much, okay? For putting up for me all the shit behind me and the piss I gave you in the past. So these are just some of the people I want to tell you. My friends into the deepest crew, my mates I grew up, Al, Chop, all yous, love yous all, okay? So for anybody that's come into my life at any time, and you know, and I'm connected to support you, I'll do the best I can, you know? I'm here in this earth to try and help people.
So I'd like to bring on the screen Mr. Robert Keenan, and we call aka Big Bob. Big Bob, how you doing?
You say Big Bob or Big B all day, you know?
Oh, fantastic, Big B. Can you tell us where you came from? Just a quick historical rundown of who is Bob Keenan? Where did
No, it's fine, Adam. So my name is Bob Keenan, and I'm a current resident of Cumbernauld. Cumbernauld is a town that was one of the 5 new built towns that got built in Scotland back in the 1950s and 60s. It was to cover the overspill of the Glasgow residents because of obviously the tenements and that were in Glasgow and they were overcrowded. So they created 5 new towns in Scotland. I think there's similar towns in England. I think Milton Keynes is one of them. So just to give an example down south, but up here in Scotland they built 5 of them. One of them was Cumbernauld. And I've been a resident in Cumbernauld most of my days, Adam. I moved away for a couple of years up to Arbroath, which I could discuss later on. But for the best part of my life, I've been a resident in this town. You know.
That sounds interesting. So you're pretty close to Glasgow, aren't you?
Yeah, it's Cumbernauld only no more than 15 miles away, so the commute is only 25 to 30 minutes. You know, the motorway now opening the roads is even quicker than that to get to Glasgow. Yeah.
And I have to ask you the most important question. Is it cold up there yet? Have you already had Christmas up in Scotland, to the motherland?
You go to my Facebook, you'll check what I was doing at the weekend. I was climbing a couple of mountains up in Scotland. And as you see at the top, it was a whiteout, it was a total blizzard, so it was pretty cold, mate, pretty cold.
Wow, fantastic. But you connect to this and it's all going into the nature and you just embrace the cold. You could say that you almost embrace the cold times in your life as well. How did it start for you out in Cumbernauld, Bob? Tell us how life began and what your perception of life was.
Well, see, my story is similar to a lot of people. I grew up in quite an impoverished household in Cumbernauld. I'm the one of three brothers. I've got two younger brothers, and I've got a couple of stepbrothers and a stepsister. My mother and father got divorced when I was 12. My dad met a new partner, and he's still with that woman today. So that's why I've got a couple of stepbrothers and stepsister. But my experience is like many others, Adam. You know, I grew up in the background of seeing things that I shouldn't be seeing. You know, a lot of drinking on. As I get a wee bit older, a lot of drugs get involved in my life. You know, I became hooked on alcohol at a young age. You know, the age of 14, I started drinking. You know, for effect, and then after that, the amounts of drugs that went along with that. You know, started smoking cannabis, taking acid, taking self. You know, speed, progressive.
Sorry to interrupt. How did that door open of you jumping at 14 years old, which is quite a tender age? Was it the culture? Was it family life, you think, that maybe pushed you into there? Why did it become an option at 14 that you went into heavy drinking and drugs, you know?
Yeah, well, I think you know the culture up in Scotland, Adam. You slide up here, you know, it's very accessible. I know that's not just Scotland. I mean, it's all over the world, but up here there just seems to be a really heavy culture that gravitates towards alcohol and drugs. You know, for me, it was brought on by kind of traumatic events that happened in my life. You know, I had a lot of stuff going on in the background, a lot of self-worth issues. You know, I didn't quite like myself as a kid. You know, I didn't like the environment I was brought up in to a degree. And a great coping mechanism for me was alcohol and drugs. It put me in a state of in the moment. You know, there's a term we use up in Glasgow and Cumbernauld and surrounding areas that I was there to get out my nut. You know, that's a very Scottish thing. But if you actually peel that back, what does that actually mean? I mean, getting out your nut means you don't want to be in your head. You know, I didn't want to be in my head. I didn't like what my head was telling me. You know, we all know about it. The inner critic. You know, the inner critic was very. You know, and can still be there today, Adam. You know, it can still be there today. Yeah. But I noticed that a lot of the stuff that I've done through recovery, cold water exposure, and stuff like climbing mountains, which I'll speak about to you later on, that voice just became a wee bit less noisy. You know, as the years went on. You know, but you know that was my background, and getting involved with a lot of drink and a lot of drugs. You know. And hanging about that kind of subculture, you know, I ended up getting involved with a lot of gang activity. You know, when I say gang, it's not quite as, I know you're doing in London now, I'm not quite as hardcore as the stuff that's going on down there, but
I think it's worse up there. I think it's worse up there, Bob.
See, you might be right to a degree, you know, it's like there's a lot of, the territorial issues are crazy up here. You know, it's like if you stay at one side, not as much in Cumbernauld, but in Glasgow. Yeah. You know, if you stay at one side of one street, and if you cross that road, you're into a different gang culture area. You know, Easterhouse in Glasgow is really bad for that. You know, there's like five massive areas, and if you cross the street, there's potentially you can get stabbed to death, and it happens a lot. You know, and then obviously, you know, on top of that, you've got a sectarian element up here. Yes. Where you've got with Celtic and Rangers, you know, that one side doesn't like the other one because one's Catholic, and the other side doesn't like the other side because they're Protestants.
And what's your view on that, Bob? Would you say that your view is on the whole religion, Catholic, Protestant thing? Where do you stand in that?
Well, you know my belief system now, Adam. Roman, I've spoke to you in I'm practicing Stone today, so I don't really get caught with the Christian element because the reality is, and as you know, they're both worship the same God. You know, they're both worshipping Jesus. You know, and they're just a different kind of doctrine. You know, one believes in the head of the church is the Pope. You know, the other one says that there doesn't need a head of church. So, and then in between that, you've got people who are fighting over a football club who supports one set of doctrines as the other one supports the other. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I think for me growing up running about that, you know, I get involved with a lot of that stupidity growing up, because I remember my father telling me, he says to me, "Son, I'm not a bigot, I'm just right." You know what? And it's like,
we go back to where you were, and you were taking all these drugs, heavy drinking. You're 14 years old. What came next? There must be a penalty to pay for that.
aye, there's a saying that I end up in a place called Alcoholics Anonymous. And then I remember an old guy saying to us once, you go, "The piper needs to be piped," you know, and that's a very Scottish saying as well, you know. But what it was meaning by that is that there's a price to pay for everything. So I was burning a candle at both ends. So if you start taking drugs at a young age, you need to remember, Roman, our minds as kids are still developing, you know.
Yeah.
And if you're putting like a lot of drugs into your system, you know, a lot of cannabis, you know, it's just not good for the psychosis, you know, get psychosis, these psychological effects with it.
Yes.
You know, the psychosis, you get into that, hearing voices, and I do all that stuff, you know, I do all that stuff. Take copious amounts of ecstasy and really seeing things and hearing things that weren't there, because you're getting lack of sleep, you know, you're getting lack of nutrients into the system.
And for those young ones out there, Bob, because it's a heavy culture just now, what does that feel like? Because you didn't just dabble with it, it took you to new levels, and obviously there's physical aspects that knock in from that, but could you tell us a bit, what did it feel like being there in a frame of mind under that much of a heavy influence?
Very, very challenging, because what happens is, right, so this is my experience, right? So I started using drugs and drink at a young age of 14. I tasted drink when I was 12, but like for the effect at the age of 14. By the age of 21, you know, I have got deep-rooted psychological problems with it. So I was had very, very intense anxiety attacks, you know, panic attacks. Then it led to that to a deep-rooted depression. I mean, a really deep-rooted depression where I didn't want to be here anymore. That's my reality. Yeah, so I was saying there, like, so the psychological effects that you get from obviously putting your body under so much stress, pressure and strain, especially the mental aspects of taking so much drink drugs, is that I became very, very unwell, you know, especially with anxiety. I had an overwhelming fear of death constantly, and then that really turned into a very deep-rooted depression, which was really, really hard. Really hard to get through. I've done a geographical change. I know you've done quite a few, Roman, in your days, you know what I mean? So,
trying to run away from yourself doesn't work, Bob.
That's going to lead me on to my next point. You know, it's like I done my geographical change. You know, I know you were quite exotic. You went to places like London and down south, and
very exotic.
Well, I didn't. I went up to a broth. You know what I mean? That was for the audience who don't know what a broth is, it's a very, very small fishing town in the northeast of Scotland. And the only reason I went to a broth was the fact is that my wee granny Kathy, she stayed up there, and all my days, Roman, to the day, my granny still looks after the whole family. You know, you can't go to my house without you making a cup of tea, a biscuit, you know, giving you something. You've met her before, cracking woman, really brilliant.
Lovely lady.
But I went up there to try and get myself better, because I didn't want to be this life wasn't good for me anymore. I didn't want to be here anymore, and that's not a good place to be, you know.
Sure, absolutely. And so were you getting yourself into bother, into trouble? Were you in debt? What was happening back then, Bob? What was happening?
You get involved in that kind of gang culture. There's a lot of violence involved, so you're getting involved with fights where people are getting really hurt. You know, really people are getting hospitalised.
Sure.
You know, threats against your life. You know, it's like, I mean, it might sound I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's no. It was like that. Whether they came to fruition was different. You know what I mean? But there was a lot of threats on you that you were going to get done in, and this was going to happen, and that was going to happen, and it was horrible. And I just had to get a break away from it, because my mental well-being was just taking a shattering. You know, it was really hard, mate, really hard.
I think you began to inflict quite a lot of bit of pain on people, didn't you, Bob, as well? We won't go too far into it to glorify it, but you yourself were caught up in this fear, and it began to make you lash out in that. Fear is often a driver for the worst things to happen, not just to you, but to other people, and you even become scared, am I right, Bob, in what you're capable of doing, you know?
Absolutely, mate. Some of the things that you see and you participate in are no good at them. Sorry, Roman, they're no good to see, because they're dangerous. You know, people were getting hospitalised, people were getting really, really hurt, you know what I mean? And like myself, I mean, I've been stabbed, I've been bottled, I've been bricked, you know, I've been these things that are no good for you, you know what I mean? It's really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
And I was very, very, very blessed to come out kind of unscathed to a degree, you know. I mean, there's a lot of friends of mine who've been in prison for a long, long time. And I was very, very fortunate not to follow them down that route.
That's good, Bob. So what happened now is this is a pretty heavy lifestyle that you're getting used to living here. You're in a pretty heavy lifestyle. You've got psychosis. Am I right in saying?
Yeah,
and you're living out regrets, and you don't know how to get out of this. But you've made a geographical change, and you've went to the village of Arbroath, which is way north of Glasgow, near Montrose and closer to Aberdeen, etc. So you're up in Arbroath, this small fishing town. Beautiful scenery, but I don't know if it's any better than Glasgow. What happens at your granny's that took you in? God bless her.
Yeah, so you know yourself, like you mentioned it only minutes ago. It's like it doesn't matter where in the world you run to, you can't run away from what's up here between your eyes. You know what I mean? You know that head, it goes everywhere with you.
When the only heart you have, it has been broken, and the second chances came 1,000 times. The best things you have said are left unspoken. The best you've ever had has been an almost, and it seems your good is never good enough. You'll be just fine. You'll be alright. Pockets are more empty than a black hole, and the people rushing past don't know your name, and the memories you have hurt to remember, when tears are all that seem to fall on your lips, when you can't seem to find a reason why. You'll be just fine. You'll be alright.
So what,
yeah. So my experience to that, Matt, Roman, was that when I ran away from my problems, Bob was always there. Bob's mind was always there. You know what I mean? So what happened when I was up there? I just gravitated to similar type of people in the community. You know, there was people in Arbroath. I was walking down the street one day, and this guy's like to me, "Oh, big man, do you owe me money for Valium?" And I says, "Mate, I don't even know who you are." I says, "But if you've got any, give me some." You know what I mean? That was my take on things, you know. And I was, before you know it, there I'm hanging about with people that I shouldn't be hanging about with. I'm drinking in pubs that I shouldn't really be drinking in. You know what I mean? And just doing the same stuff, mate. It was challenging. It was a challenging time in my life.
So what happens next then? You've came up, you've tried to move away, you're back in the same spider's web. I've been there myself. And all of a sudden you're beginning, was there anything beginning to happen in your life that says, well, that this needs to stop? Did it come to a crescendo? Did you get fed up of it? How did you begin to turn this around, Bob?
You know, the best thing ever happened to me is that I've had positive role models in my life. And my experience was this: there was a cousin of mine who works with me. Believe it or not, he actually works for us today. Me and him, I've got a small business that I'm running now, and he works for me in that business, you know, and I'll be forever indebted to him.
What is it you're doing? Give us a plug.
I took over a window cleaning business that I took over about 2 years ago, and I started off myself with it, you know, very small, and I've expanded. I've got 2 guys out with me. I'm doing pretty well.
Is it safe to say you're seeing things clearer now?
Well, they can see clearer anyway, the people that are.
Well, so I interrupted you there. So you're...
So the positive role model I had, so my cousin Billy came up to a prof I called Big Bill with him, and what happened with Bill was he came up and heard he wasn't drinking anymore, heard he was off alcohol. And I said, "What do you mean you're off alcohol?" I couldn't believe it. And a quick story, I'll tell you what happened, right? So we went to the dancing that night. We went to this local dancing, and the usual what happened with me is I drank too much, I blacked out, and I woke up in my bed in my new flat in Abrof. You know, I called it my granny flat because it was an old woman who stayed in it before us, and I just never decorated the place. You know what I mean? It was like an old woman's flat that I stayed in because I was too lazy to drink. You know what I mean? To do that. Anyway, cut a long story short, I woke up in this bed in my granny flat. And I was like, how did I get here? And Bill tells the story. He says, "Oh, 1 minute you were there, the next minute you were gone." But he told me that he was off a drink and he went to a place called Alcoholics Anonymous. So he cut a long story short. I wasn't that impressed at the time, but something stuck with me as to how did he not drink? You know what I mean?
Really?
Cut a long story short, I moved back down the road, back to Cumbernauld. I got into all the stuff I was involved with, elements of criminality, drug misuse, all the stuff that goes with it. And I got to my lowest ebb, you know, my lowest point. And you know me, you know my beliefs, Adam, you know my practice in Stoic today, you know.
Sure.
But I've got a belief in a God. I've got a belief in a God, you know, and I says, I remember praying to this God, you know, that I rejected many years before. And I says, "God, see if you're there, just going to let me die, because I can't go and live in this." Right, really, I meant it with all my heart. And then sees I says the words, something came over me. Says,
Really?
No, God, please, you're nearly crying, you know, please, going to give me help. Right, now I can't give you a timeline exactly when this happened, right, but see within a short period of time, I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, right, Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the major things for Alcoholics Anonymous is to come to believe in a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity, right? So that had to be a power greater than Bob, right? And so they asked me to take on a concept of power greater than me. I chose it to call God, but my belief system's changed throughout the years, but I've still got that belief in a power greater than myself today. And that power that's greater than myself has kept me new off the drink. So that was in 2005. I've not drank for nearly 16 years. I had 15 and a half years I've been off the drink. Just for 15 years before I dropped alcohol in my system, you know, and that's remarkable. That's remarkable.
It is remarkable. Well, could I ask you first, because it rolls so smoothly off the tongue, but before you go any further, what was it that attracted you? Was it the life of soberness? But was it just Billy? Were you amazed? What was it that, I mean, it must have been crazy coming from this gang culture, coming from, you know, the heart of Scotland, and then all of a sudden sitting there in a room with other people saying, "Hello, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a cokehead, I'm a this, I'm the other." You know, what's actually, how did that make you feel when you first experienced that, and how long did that take you to, I mean, what was it about it? Do you think that prayer that you said, or do you think that it was the people around you You know, you said a great thing before, Bob. You said that I believe that God works through people. You know, and that always stuck with me. What is it that attracted you to, number one, going to that meeting? Because I mean, I even know in myself, sometimes it's not enough. You want to change, but what was it about that the AA or Billy or the people you met there, or listening to these guys telling you that there's a better route for life? You must have surely thought at first, hang on a minute here, like you don't know me, like, because it's a huge change, Bob. What happened in the middle there? What was it like walking into your first meeting there?
See, Roman, what it was, the proof was in the pudding, right? So when I went into these meetings, right, there was people with my interpretation what it would have been going into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and later on, Life of Cocaine Anonymous meeting, was that I would begin to see people who, like, you know, the Ramsey Nisbet sketch, you know, that used to, the famous sketch for the Glasgow tramp, for Govan, you know, that was on the BBC. You know, bandana around the heat, the string vest, you know, probably a bit, really, a wee bit, looking a wee bit like, as we call it here, a Jakey, you know. But you didn't get that. No, you were walking in and there was people who were glowing with life, who were, you know, looking you directly in the eye. I couldn't look anybody in the eye. You know, anytime I was in company, I would be looking down at people's shoes. You know, I would be looking round about me. These people were looking me directly in the eye. And you know the power of role models, and I do mean that. I believe in a thing today called aborifatiae, right, which means love of one's fate. It was my fate to go there. And as I say to you, my higher power works through people, as you know, I've spoken this before, you know. And there was people in there who were saying to me, now remember the background I had. I left school with no qualifications, you know. I was involved with gang culture, you know. I was involved with stuff that I wasn't proud of. And there was people in here saying, do you know what, Bob? See, if you apply yourself and take your stuff into your life, you could go into university, you could have your own business, you could do all the things that you've always dreamed of doing. Now, I would say to them at that time, I would look them in the eye and I would say, aye, I believe you. But see, my head, that internal voice was saying, no, you can't. No, you can't. Don't listen to what they're saying. They're not trying to fool you.
Because you trained yourself to be a failure, more or less. When this happens, we train ourselves. When you come from everything that's going wrong in your life and when you're going through hard times, this is one of the keys that I want to talk about and would love you to talk about, should I say, Bob, where you're telling yourself you can't, as us Scottish would say, you know, you're telling yourself you can't. How did you begin to change that? Now, you mentioned there that you are a Stoic, and you're also responsible for leading quite a successful podcast, and it's growing every day, and I'll drop the link on the screen to that at the end of the programme. Now, you guys are talking a lot of sense. How did you begin? And you mentioned some Latin there, which is above my head. So, even though I have some Latin tattooed on me and Roman numerals, and the name is Roman Adam, it's one of these things that it's very intriguing. I love Roman history, but there's actually some really great ethics that you operate on, and one of them I want to know is, how did you change? How did you apply what you were introduced to, and what's the difference through what the higher power said and what the Stoic society said and what your voice was saying? If you could match those three things up, how did you manage to tie it all together and cause it to be something, a platform for you to walk upon and begin to plant and build your life in a new way, in a more effective way? If you could join the dots for me, what was your mind thinking there? So you left off saying that you can't do this and you can't. How did you change it to you can?
That's a very, very good question. We want to start with talking about Stoicism, how that came about. Well, that was actually a later development. So I got stuck with this idea of the concept of power greater myself. And there was a couple of flaws I seen in some of my old belief system, you know. And coincidentally, you know, I believe in everything's meant for a reason. I believe in fate. And I get given a book, you know, it was The Art of Happiness by Derren Brown. And the book itself, I never finished the book, but there was references in it to the Stoics and to a philosopher known as Arthur Schopenhauer. And me being the inquisitive mind that I've got, you know what, like, Roman, I get it, I'm quite obsessed.
The great analyzer.
So I started getting into reading. Who's the Stoics? Because I done philosophy at bits at college, you know, and I went over the main ones, you know, Aristotle, Plato, and looked at stuff like Socrates and that. And I always liked the ethics of Socrates. And then what I found out by starting reading the Stoics is that it was a Socratic philosophy. So
Socratic philosophy.
So they took a lot of the teachings for Socrates and enhanced on it to come up with their own philosophy, you know. And what it was is the Stoics, what they found by reading the Stoics, but they seen it the highest ideal, right? The highest goal was to live a life of virtue, right? Now, people will be questioning, what do you mean by virtue? Well,
yes, what do you mean by that?
Virtue just is, if you wanted to put it in layman's terms, would be described as excellence of character, right? So your character, right? What the Stoics believed was that your actions, right? So your actions, your desires, your judgments and your aversions were totally within your power, right? Your actions completely within your power, right? And there was 4 cardinal virtues that the Stoics adhered to. So one was wisdom, right? Wisdom to make the right choices. Courage, you know. The best way I describe it is to get off your arse and go out to work every day, go and help your fellow man, right? They looked at justice, you know, but justice to them was to help your fellow man, you know, as you know, that stuff that I do adhere to Roman with the 12-step work I do. And another one was temperance, with self-control, right? So see, when I started reading this, I'm like, I can apply this stuff in my life. You know, it's not too difficult that I can't try and apply it. Now, what the Stoic says, right? There was no such thing as there was. They seen a reason to be a sage, right? But there's an ideal sage, right? But you're never going to get as close to. You're never get near an ideal sage, but do the best that you can, right? So the ideal sage would be like, probably like, the best way to describe him would be like kind of like Jesus Christ, you know, like the perfect human being, you know, a figure that's somebody to look up to and aspire to. But what the Stoics differed was that they said you'll never get to the ideal stage, but try your best to get as close to it. So see, every day, what I do today, when I try my best to make the right choices, you know, through wisdom, you know, through justice, I try and help my fellow man on a daily basis, you know. I get the courage to get half mass and go and work every day, you know. And I struggle this time of year, you know, I really struggle.
Could you tell us why that is, Bob? I saw a post on your Facebook, actually. I wanted to talk about 2 in particular, but since you're at that one, could you tell us why you go through that and what you do? It's quite interesting what you do to deal with that and cope with that.
I've got a lot, as you know, I've got a lot of crazy coping mechanisms, but they work perfectly fine for me. So what it is that I stay in Scotland, you know, you've been here before.
Oh, I absolutely, brought up, born and bred.
Where I think, you know, it's very wet, grey and murky outside, you know, murky, you know, the Scottish slang for no very good, you know, no very good. So it's not looking very good looking outside my window now. You know, it's cold, it's wet. So I get a thing called seasonal affective disorder, right? Wow. So what happens is my mood massively.
Yeah, this I didn't know there was such a thing until you explained it to me, but I understand that a lot of people do suffer from it.
Yeah. Aye, so seasonal affective disorder, which is known as SAD. So when the clocks go back, you know, you wake up and it's dark mornings and it's dark nights, and people get it's a mild form of depression, you know. Right. And I've had it now for like 16 years, and I've had it longer than that probably, but I used to get drunk all the time.
So you didn't notice that you were depressed?
And I stopped. See, if I kept drinking, I would have noticed it, you know. But because I've sobered up now, I noticed it in the winter, right? So I've got a lot of great coping mechanisms, right? So I'll get into them just now. So as you know, so part of the Stoics, I know my philosophy that I believe in and the lifestyle I try and live, was the Stoics were massive on resilience, right? So resilience is to get through pain and suffering and just life in life terms, you know. And so this SAD is part of my resilience training. And what I do is I'm involved with a group called Into the Deepest. And what we try and do is we try and follow a lot of teachings of a practitioner known as Wim Hof. The Wim Hof is known as the Iceman. And what he says, he likes to engage with nature.
Not
Isn't
from
that?
Top Gun, I take it. Not from Top Gun.
No, not from Top Gun. Oh, he's a Dutchman.
Right.
I suggest any of your listeners to have a wee look into some of his stuff. You know, he's a bit crazy, bit out there. But what he does is he engages with nature, and he's got like the world record for being in an ice like vat himself for over an hour. You know, and still being alive. Most people would die at this. You know, he gets into a meditative state and embraces cold water therapy, ice therapy, because climbs mountains and shorts and that, and doesn't die. You know, he survives because it's the power of the mind over the body. And what I do to combat like stuff like the SAD is that I go into ice locks at this time of year, you know, cold water. And I don't just mean me, there's a group called Into the Deepest, as I mentioned. And when we started the group up, there was 16 members, right? Since that's been up and running for about a year now, we've got 530 people on the page now, and everywhere you go, people are getting into cold water now. They're seeing it as a good therapeutic value. And the best way I can describe why it's so good for us, right? So when you put yourself into a fight, flight, or freeze situation, right, a stressor situation, and you overcome that fear, right? So, for example, getting into the cold water, right? People say, "Oh, you're mad. Why you get in there, right?" But see, when you get into that water, right, the best way I can describe it. Now, I mentioned earlier on in an interview when I used to drink, I used to want to be out my nut, right? When I was on the drinking drugs, it gives me a sense where I'm no longer in my head anymore. You know, I'm in the cold water. I'm in the present moment. You know, they call the present because it's a gift, right? Absolutely. So I'm there in the cold water with 10 or 12, maybe up to 15 crazy guys. Mostly, some women do it as well, but mostly it's the men that way. And we're all just sitting there having a laugh. We're all connected to each other. We're connected with nature. We're having a great experience externally, but also internally.
You mentioned there that when you used to drink, you went out your nut, as we all done, you know, and not everybody drinks to that extent, but guys like me and you have really crossed the boundaries, you know, to the point of no return. Now, thank God that there is peace at the end of that, there is control, there is whatever way or route that you find, whatever way or route that you find to move into being better, as we say. But you said that you like to get your nut, you like to get out your mind. Now, when you're under that water, when you're surrounded by that freezing cold, could I ask you, I mean, does that indicate that your mind is still busy at the minute? Or can you just clarify what that is? Is that still a trace of just exactly what you were trying to say there, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair comment. It's like, I am never, ever going to be cured of any form of a racing mind, you know. Each and every human being has got it to degrees, right? I think the older we get, we recognise that can brought me stress, can brought me anxiety, can depression and so forth, especially what I'm telling you about the seasonal affective disorder. It's hard to regulate my mood, you know what I mean? So I can have a head that still can get into overdrive. But the coping mechanisms today are so much better than they used to be. You know, so the coping mechanisms for that wasted head in the past would have been alcohol, drugs, and so forth. Today, the coping mechanisms are so much got more therapeutic value. So I'm getting into cold water. I'm climbing mountains. I'm helping people through group therapy. You know, through 12-step program work. You know, I'm connecting with human beings on a daily basis. You know, it's like when we get into the depths of addiction, what it does disconnects us. You know, it's such an insidious illness, you know, alcoholism and drug addiction, because it wants to disconnect you from people. But as Francis Bacon once says, you know, no man's an island, you know, we're social creatures, you know, the Stoics are masterful in that. They come up with the term cosmopolitanism, you know, because I am a citizen of the universe, I think it was Marcus Aurelius stated, you know. What he means by that is that we connect with everything around about us, you know, to be at one with nature. And I think with myself, that's what I try and apply into my life. And not just my life, you know, I had my son away at a retreat a couple of weeks ago, and my boy was in the cold water. You know, he's 14, can run 15 now, and he's had a lot of troubles in his life up to now, his short life, you know, with issues with alcohol and issues with drugs and stuff like that as well. So it's good to get him engaged with the stuff that I'm engaging with too, you know.
You know, Bob, that's so beautifully put, and it's interesting there to know that your son is now about 14, 15, the age when it all kind of went square for you. But I would like to ask, you know, with your son, as what you've learned all this time, are you able? You said it was in the cold water; he was at a retreat himself. I mean, are you noticing a change there? Because I know that you don't enforce anything on anyone, but it must be hard for you seeing where that can take you, but then realizing that you now have an answer, and now you're almost. I mean, does he have to bridge that gap? Do you just, for the parents out there that could be watching this, Bob? You know, what would you say to them if they're being very patient, you know, with 14, 15-year-olds, you know? What would your advice be to them when you know that you know better, but these days they know better and there's not a lot you can do about that? Now you can show them the odd retreat. How do you deal with that, Bob? What advice would you give these parents? How do you bridge the gap?
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard one even getting advice on it, because we've all got our own different styles of parenting, you know what I mean? The big one for me was, which helped me through stoicism, was the idea of what I'm power over. You know what I've got power over? You know, I've got power over my actions. You know, I've got power over my judgments, you know, and my desires and my aversions. You know, that's it. So it's very difficult when your kids are not adhering to the same type of values that you've got, but you need to recognise that they're on their own journey too. You know what I mean? And what I've recognised, and what you probably recognise yourself, is that I learn the most out of mistakes that I've made in my life. You know what I mean? And I sometimes need to just take a step back and just say, it's difficult, very, very difficult. But sometimes I've had to just sit back and just let him run his own course and make his own mistakes. And
acceptance, is, I believe, is one of those steps, you know. And you're a prime example. And I don't mean to blow smoke up your nose, you know. But at the same time, you are an example that I have witnessed, you know, to many. So over the last 4 years, it's been a very trying and challenging time for you, as you're explaining. How have you managed to cope from that? Because us creatures are funny. Sometimes we jump back to what we know, and I know that certain psychologists and theories of that would say that you develop your escape routes before the age of 7 and up to the age of 7 that's installed in you. Now, it's very, very hard to uproot things. But certainly once I realised that going to the root of things, you know, the Bible would say, how can a bad tree bear good fruit? You know, you have to uproot that and replant something else. And the mind, it has to be right, you know, and we all have different ways of interpreting that and moving forward with that. But the common goal here is the acknowledgement, you know, of the higher power. I call him Jesus. You call him Bob a toaster or whatever it is you say. it's not that. Yeah, I'm joking. What I'm saying is that the sterling way you've been able to show and live this out is by example, with that beautiful saying I'm going to say again, that you said that God works through people, you know, and I believe that God's used you in my life, if I may say, as well, Bob, to introduce me those years ago when I was going through very hard and challenging times myself. So I thank you for that publicly as well. This show is called #NoFilter, and there is no filter, and my story is a different story for a different time and a different place. But how have you been coping with what you are, with how you've been experiencing this last 4 years? You've been doing all these things, ice water, some of the other things you've mentioned. But is it hard, Bob? Is it still hard, or do you notice a distinctive peace of mind? You know, my mind used to be that busy that I used to have to turn on the TV to get a bit of silence and a bit of peace in my life. You know, I couldn't sit in a quiet room. What is your head like just now after applying all these things that you've been talking about?
Yeah, so the last 4 years have probably been the hardest 4 years I've ever had in recovery, you know, with things growing, but also, and the flip side of that, it's probably been some of the most remarkable things that's ever happened in my 4 years of recovery. So I'll get at some of the negatives at the road first. So, as you know, I was married, I went through a divorce, so that was challenging. I also had a job that I'd lost, got made redundant, so that was very challenging. I had a lot of social issues with my son, so there was a lot of stuff, as I was saying earlier on, about a lot of violence he was involved in. There was stuff like stabbings, and there was robberies and police just really, really hard stuff, you know what I mean? And it was kind of curtailed where there was an attempt on his own life, you know, only about a year ago. So throughout that whole process, you know,
Wow.
anybody going through that would have found it difficult. You know,
Absolutely.
but never once, Roman, never once did Mahid say to me, you know, let's get full of drink, that'll take that away. Let's get full of cocaine, that'll take that away.
Wow.
Because as you say, I'm a member of a community, right? And I'm a role model to people.
Yes.
So I need to adhere to the principles that I spout. You know, there's no point in me saying to people, you know, you're going to have a life beyond your wildest dreams. You know, you're going to have this remarkable life. And if you apply yourself to this stuff for your life, then it'll come good. So what happens when things go bad then? You know, they values still need to be upheld. So there was people I was helping through 12-step programs. You see, if I went back out drinking again and using it, I would have just let them down. I wouldn't have just let myself down, I'd have let them down. And I couldn't do that. You know, I couldn't live with that. So what I did is I started applying myself even more deep into my values and try to help fellow human beings. Some of the most remarkable things that have happened in the last 4 years, but you know, I get involved with the cold water therapy. I've climbed, so there's 282 mountains in Scotland. In the last year, I think I'm up at 45 now I've climbed, so I'm trying to get 50 by the end of the year. One day we did 9 mountains in one day, you know, that was the kind of level. So it's like,
I forgot to mention to the viewers as well that if you're wondering why Bob is managing to climb 9 mountains in one day, he was a former martial artist. You know, I think I mentioned at the very start of the show, this man is very fit, he's very driven, and his life changed completely around. So what we've heard over the last beautiful time, and we're going to get a part 2 to this, I'm going to invite you, Bob, if you would, to come back on in a few weeks' time, you know, and I might have to put some subtitles on for our American friends there across the Atlantic. But that would be for the both of us, Bob. That would be for the both of us. But what I would like to just summarise, guys, is you're looking at a guy here that's got one of the most beautiful of hearts that I've ever seen. One of the strongest minds. He's got a very complex mind, and often people that are born that way, that are chosen, however you want to put it, to walk in that road, are often affected by depression. They overthink things, you know. They become very sensitive, and therefore can become very angry and retaliate, and self-abuse can start. And you're looking at a man that was, as he's explained, right there in the thick of it from the age of 14. He then recognised about 16 years ago that he couldn't take anymore. I mean, this guy was involved in violence on both sides of it, and what he's now moved into is a brand new enlightened state of mind. He's done that through his own coping mechanisms. He cried out on God at one time because he just couldn't take it. He then wanted to know practically how he could apply anything that would make him better, and now he is on the flip side, running a business. He's running a podcast. He's helping guys one-on-one. This guy is not afraid to get his sleeves rolled up and get his hands dirty. And I would encourage you to reach out to Bob if you have been in, you know, or call into the channel if you have been through a similar kind of walk of alcoholism, cocaine addiction, and the crack smacking Prozac, as an old saying goes. There is never a time that you can be so down and so desperate that there is not a light shining with hope that you can run to. You need to flee from evil, as I would quote from the Bible. Now, what's interesting here is that there's a very practical way that Bob has opened up so much of how to apply that by example, and certain things that he does. As if you missed the start of the program, please go back and watch it again. We're going to finish off now with some footage that he had, and before we play that, we had played a clip at the very beginning of this, and this is where we took it from. We took it from his Facebook page, but in that he goes around, you know, saying he's at the top of what mountain were you at, Bob?
We were at the Ring of Steel, which is the back end of Ben Nevis. Ben Nevis being the highest mountain in Britain. So, yeah, it was a great day.
Wow. and there's just this atmosphere that's there, and I know Bob to be, this is Bob just being genuine, you know. There's been times where I've broke down into tears around this gentleman when he brings such a spirit, if I could call it, of peace, you know, and he's just so genuine, you know, and it really makes you think. And I'm going to ask Bob to just give a final message before we leave you with the video. Just give a final message to that guy, that girl out there that's feeling like there's no hope, that's depressed, that's addicted, no matter what drug, no matter what drink, or if it's alcoholism, or if it's porn, or if it's anger, or if it's gambling. Could you give them a message, Bob, just before we shoot onto this video? And I just want to say now, guys, thanks for viewing. The show's going to go on every single week, and I'm going to leave you with some words from one of my dearest friends here, Bob Keenan, and please do not be afraid to call in if you've been affected by any of the issues or messages that we've talked about, and that my friend Bob here has talked about on the channel. Bob, could you leave us with some words for those who feel like there is no hope?
Aye, thanks, Adam. I would just like to say you talked about hope there. There is no hopeless cases in this world, you know. We're all here for some grand design, whether that be the Christian God, the Islamic God, the Stoic gods. It doesn't really matter what your belief system is, but you're here for a reason. You know, Viktor Frankl attached it says that every man must have purpose and meaning. So if you're stuck in a mire now, depths of depression, you know, depths of anxiety, you know, addiction issues, you know, abuse, you know, always remember, time's a very, very short commodity, and this too shall pass, you know. So stay strong, believe in yourself, you know. Get in about positive role models, you know. For some people that might be something that they've not got, but it was one of the greatest things that changed my life, you know. People who put me up rather than put me down, you know. And if you're listening to this, you're obviously on the right track. So keep doing what you're doing, you know. And there's great guys like Roman. They'll be here for you, and if you want to get in contact with me, Roman will put some contact details up, and I'll be free to speak to anybody. That's okay. Thank you.
Bob, thanks for coming on the show. That was beautiful. Just before we end this video, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, mate. Really good to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. You've been watching #NoFilter with Bob Keenan, and my name is Roman Adam Sampson, and we're going to be here next week again. Please share the video. And get them to share the video, tell your friends to tell their friends, get it about. There's been a really positive message here from a very genuine guy that went through hell and is starting to taste heaven. Please go back and watch it if you've just joined us, and may God bless you and keep you. Stay safe.
So I'm putting out this video today. If you can look behind me, look at all these beautiful hills. Right behind us now, the my head here is Ben Nevis. Now, why I'm putting this video out, every day I put up quotes, stoic quotes, mostly about different issues. The other day I put up a quote for Seneca saying, if you wish to be loved, love. So with the question I'm asking, what does that mean to people? You know, for me in the past it was what I could get out of people. So today I'm saying a different message. Today, as I see that quote, is that the more I give it, I get the same in return. So I'm putting that wee shout out to a few people who I love. I know it sounds a bit corny to people, and I don't care for the haters are going to hate me for it, slag me for it. Who cares? It's no for yous. This is for the people who want to hear it. And it goes like this. I'm putting it to my family first. I want to tell my brothers, I love you. I want to tell my mammy why I love her. I love her because you've helped me with many things throughout my life. Financially, spiritually, loving. So thanks. My dad for the values and the ethics you gave me. Thanks for that. My immediate family, my son. Your dad loves you. You know you do wrong, but you know that. You can turn it round. Max, love you son. Jimmy, love you son. Holly, thanks for being there and being a great daughter for us. And for the grandman you're bringing into my life. I love you for that day. For my estranged ex-wife, wife, partner, soon-to-be partner, whoever knows, I love you so much, okay? For putting up for me all the shit behind me and the piss I gave you in the past. So these are just some of the people I want to tell you. My friends into the deepest crew, my mates I grew up, Al, Chop, all yous, love yous all, okay? So for anybody that's come into my life at any time, and you know, and I'm there to support you, I'll do the best I can. You know, I'm here in this earth to try and help people.